You may have heard about the circular economy and how it promises to tackle our most urgent environmental issues. Achieving a circular economy will help us be less of a burden on nature, elevate our commitment towards recycling our waste by restoring and regenerating our systems. Okay, seriously, your brain should be in self-defense mode right now. Because you probably have the same questions as me when I first heard about circular economy. What exactly is circular economy? Why can't it be easier to understand? Most importantly, what does it have to do with me as an individual? Well, these are the questions that we are here to answer, but before we can talk about that, we really need to talk about why we are responsible for the climate crisis and why we are actually killing ourselves. Buy. More. That seems to be the default of any society ruled by consumerism, including Japan. This is the promise of the industry revolution, isn't it? It gave many countries the chance to grow like never before. Rising affluence means more money to spend on ourselves. Life is good. Except it isn't. We are beginning to suffer because wealth and growth did not come free. The cost we paid was environmental sacrifice, loss of nature, and unfortunately human blood. To understand what I mean by this, we need to start looking at the way we make and use things. And as it turns out, that is exactly why society and the environment are suffering. Looking at how we make and use stuff, we realize that we can break them down into 3 stages. Taking elements like wood and metal and energy from nature as base materials. Make, to manufacture and create the things we use daily. Waste, after we make and use the products, we discard them, often back into nature. Sometimes people call this the linear economy. Remember this term because it's going to be useful in the future. This doesn't sound scary, you might say. How can it be killing us? Well,
it's the slow knife, the knife that takes its time, that waits years without forgetting, that cuts deepest.
Oh yeah, you're watching that kind of video. Back to the linear economy of take, make, waste. It is best understood with an example. One of the henchmen of the villain we face, the plastic bottle. What makes the plastic bottle? Well, plastic bottles are 99% made from fossil fuels, a form we call PET, and that's why it's called the PET bottle. It is estimated that we will produce 583 billion PET bottles this year in 2021, and that's a whole lot of fossil fuels used to make bottles for drinks. This, my friends, is literally solid fossil fuel, and the world produces 18,000 of this per second. Not only is fossil fuel a finite resource that will eventually run out, it also releases different types of greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. Let's not forget what happens to the plastic bottles after they get used. Recycling rates vary from country to country. For example, 30% in the US, 97% in Norway, and 85% in Japan. Unfortunately, it is the unrecycled plastic bottles that has unrecycled is not a word. Shut up. Plastic bottles that are not recycled have 2 possible disastrous destinations. One of them is the landfill. Irradiated by sunlight, exposed to rainwater, toxic leachate is formed. Look, I don't know how to pronounce leachate, okay? Posing dangers to the ecosystems and water sources. Another destination of plastic bottles might end up in the ocean. They will break down into microplastics that fishes eat and consequently, we eat those fishes. Unfortunately, plastic bottles are not the only bad side effect of the linear economy of take, make, and waste. We have the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the meat that we eat, smartphones, televisions, toiletries, almost everything we use eventually has an impact on the environment. And the most dire of that impact has manifested itself as the climate crisis that we face today. So, is there a solution to this death machine we call the linear economy? Fortunately, there is. By taking that linear economy and bending it into a circular economy. Catch our next episode as we discover how a circular economy can help us tackle the climate crisis and much more. So we mentioned that 85% of plastic bottles are recycled in Japan. What's important is the remaining 15% because that equates to 3.5 billion plastic bottles every year. They are either not being collected, they are not suitable for incineration, or they end up in the ocean. Furthermore, about 55% are recycled in Japan, which means the remaining 30+% are sent overseas for recycling. So even though there's a high recycling rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that the country is doing enough. Ultimately, we'll need to design a circular system to reduce our plastic waste and find ways to use them as a plastic as a resource. And the pronunciation is leachate. Of course I know how to pronounce it. I said I know how to